Maybe this should be a video on politics and wargaming. Yeah, and I don't really want to do that because I don't see a lot of politics in wargaming. However, I'm doing this based on my review of The Last Jedi. I've got the Star Wars Rebellion game here. Underneath this is what I'm going to be covering next, which is Unhappy King Charlie. Unhappy King Charles, I guess. Which is a card-driven game by Charles Vassy. And, a game I have very mixed feelings about, and I'll go into that when I do a playthrough. But I want to do kind of like politics in movies, in war games, particularly when it comes to Star Wars Rebellion. A fantastic game which has, as far as I can tell, no political message in it other than, well, the world of Star Wars. But I've seen The Last Jedi, and I mentioned that in another video, and how awful that movie is. And that movie's so awful because, basically it infuses modern social, political, in particular social justice, which I hate to say, but I mean it's true, social justice norms into the movie, and it made the movie pretty much just cringe worthy. I mean, just a movie that, and not just cringe worthy in terms of when they mention social justice and when you see the characters, but basically it replaces good storytelling with, we want to make this movie, the Star Wars movie, about political ideology rather than just talking about the story. And that, in something like Star Wars, it is a death sentence. I mean, certainly having political topics in movies is something that's always happened. And you can have, if I look back on, you can see things like On the Waterfront. You can see movies and films like, High Noon. And those are movies that do have political messages involved in them. However, they're good stories and they're good movies because they have good scripts and characters. And the things that happen in those movies make there's nothing about the characters and stories in those movies that don't make sense. And that's how you should have politics involved in a movie, if you want to have a message to a movie. And also, those messages in On the Waterfront and High Noon are messages you carry on from generation to generation, right? They're movies that are about standing up, the individual standing up to wrong, to seeing something that's wrong in the world. Now, those movies had a particular, story in the fact that this was the Red Scare, the blacklisting of people in Hollywood due to communism, and they were basically, McCarthyism, kind of run out or are prevented from speaking based on McCarthyism. And that's about the individual standing up against that. And what happened in reality is not long after these movies were done, in fact, people did stand up to people said, hey, this is ridiculous to have a witch hunt to try and find people due to this, senator who's, on this witch hunt against communists, even people who aren't communists, clearly aren't communists, And so it's a very they're still very good movies because, again, the idea of the individual standing up against the group thought. The difference with what Star Wars and what's happening to Star Wars and other movies is the social justice that is involved in the new Star Wars and the I think for other movies as well isn't the individual standing up against what's wrong. Instead, it's the group. In essence, it's the reverse of those movies. It's the group against the individual, right? The group is more important. Whether the group is right or wrong, the group is what's more important. And that's not going to stand, I don't think. I mean, I hope it doesn't. Because if it does, then we're going to have a reintroduction of communist socialist beliefs and the lack of individualism, and we're going to see a horrible, we know what the consequences of that are, which is millions and millions of people being killed and re-educated due to a political system. But I really don't think that's going to happen, particularly in the United States. I don't think it's going to happen. I hope it doesn't happen in Europe, although it seems more kind of prevalent there. If you've seen, what's happening there with the laws where, you can't make jokes online without being sent to prison. But anyway, so, my Star Wars thing is that, Star Wars is essentially dead to me now after The Last Jedi. Because it's no longer, you had the heroes and villains, you had very interesting characters. You see Darth Vader here. You had somebody, here we have two very evil people, one of which started good. We know he's, Darth Vader started good, turned evil, and then Luke, for all his, like in the first movie, Luke was kind of a bland character and not very interesting. But over the course of Empire Strikes Back, The Return of the Jedi, he really, he kept his humanity. And he went to, even when he found out his father was this evil guy who's, killed millions and millions of people or had killed them, that he was still... would sacrifice himself to try and save somebody he saw some good in, his father. And he knew his father had good in. And eventually did change at the end of Return of the Jedi, changed his father into a good person. And the Emperor was, of course, as evil as it gets. And, Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker, eventually finds the little bit of goodness in his dark soul and saves his son and kills the Emperor. Great series of 3 movies. Really, the hero's journey, the quest, the fact that, there's evil in all of us. There was evil in Luke. Luke saw the evil in himself. It didn't let it turn him to evil. Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker, was good. He gave in to the evil inside that we all have, but eventually said, I can overcome that. The good is better than the evil. Okay. So, The Last Jedi, all this doesn't matter. I mean, the whole really, wonderful series of these 3 movies, which I saw all as a child. I was like 5 years old when I saw the first Star Wars movie and saw all of them in the theaters. After that, none of that matters anymore. The Last Jedi basically says, Luke's doesn't care anymore. All he did in the first 3 movies, nothing. And we see all the social justice. It's about the group rather than the individual. The Force is a group thing now where anybody gets it whenever. And it's really disturbing to me that Hollywood, I think, McCarthyism back then said, well, communism's invading Hollywood and our world. And that was clearly, there was some of that, that's for sure. But it was clearly a witch hunt to just kind of find people. You know what, really, if McCarthyism was going now, they could go to Hollywood and say, yeah, it's pretty clear that that the people making these movies have these very Marxist, communist belief in society and what should happen with society. It's no longer the individual, it's the group. It's no longer the individual standing up for what's right. No, it's the group. It's the purple-haired ladies all getting together to, suppress the patriarchy against all the evil white males that run, the evil empire. And it doesn't resonate, and it won't. They're basically killing Star Wars. They think that will resonate with young people. I don't think it will, because I think most young people, again, in the United States, and probably in Europe too, are going to look, they still are about the individual. They're about themselves. They're about their own, to say, well, most of them are white. Most of Europe and the United States, we're like, 70% white people. And to say that white people are bad is not going to resonate with people. To say that men are bad is not going to resonate with people. Even though half our population or a little over is female, well, yeah, but the females have sons and husbands and boyfriends and fathers. And, to say, well, men are shit and women are great, that's not a message that resonates with people in general. And I think that's why you see women and minorities going on talking, blacks and Hispanics going on and just railing on this movie because, the story's so shit. The people there, nothing makes sense. It's just clearly a movie to propagate this social justice agenda, and it doesn't make for good storytelling. There's one thing if you want to have propaganda, if it's interesting propaganda, well, that's good. And again, you can have a message, a political message, like in, High Noon or On the Waterfront, but you have to have a good story to back it. And fortunately for me, social justice is not a good story, and it doesn't tell a good story. It's not about the individual. It's not about the individual overcoming obstacles. No, it's about group identity, and that's just not very interesting to watch. Nobody wants to see that. Nothing about that's interesting it doesn't speak to a person on the individual level. So, anyway, that's my feeling on The Last Jedi, and it's just an awful movie. I'm not going to watch any more Star Wars movies. I'm done with that. Clearly, Disney is given this franchise to, political idealism not even idealism, a political stance that I don't agree with, and that doesn't make. And even if I didn't agree with it, if it was interesting or fun or enjoyable, I would be okay with that. But it's not. It's just, it scolds. It's you're bad. You're, bad people, bad white people, bad men, bad whatever. That's just, who the hell wants to see that? Maybe a few people, but in general, nobody wants to see that. You want to see a good story. And there's no good story in The Last Jedi. It's just, it just, you look at it and go, this is just awful stuff. So, anyway, but I'm going to go into Charles Vassey's Unhappy King Charles here, and we will go through a game playthrough.